Welcome to How Do You Hustle. This week we have Jess and Stef from Twoobs on the line with us. How are you both today?
We're good, thanks. We are sisters, so we usually have this like symbiotic thing where like one person jumps in after the other, and then it just failed right then. So here we are.
Yeah, I was ready and waiting. Yeah, no, we're good. We just jumped off a Clubhouse call, so we're having a firing afternoon.
A Clubhouse call?
Yeah, you know,
Yeah, you know
Clubhouse.
Clubhouse, that app?
Oh, I haven't used it. Cool. Love that. So you both wear heaps of different hats, but tell me about the main things that you both do. I'll get you to start, Jess.
Sure. So I guess in previous times, if you would have asked that, we kind of had two businesses going at the one time. We had How to Live and we had Twoobs. How to Live being this blog that we started back in 2012. That's something that we have kind of let go of. She's not dead. She's just sleeping in a really deep sleep. We're not sure if she'll ever wake up, but maybe she will. So for the moment, we're really focused on Twoobs, which is our footwear label. It's got a vegan and environmental focus, and it's where Steph and I spend most of our time. I work on the product and environmental side of things, and Steph does the marketing. And then we've got a team and an office, and things feel a bit fancy.
Amazing. I must admit, back in the day, I actually followed your blog, and so when I saw that you had this new project, I immediately recognized you. So I think that, I'm one of the old school, I'm probably like around your age. So I remember those days. I had a blog too. Definitely wasn't as successful, but I mean, I was doing it. So I love our whole concept. A lot of this podcast is about sustainability and people starting projects that are a bit, I guess contributing to the greater good, not just, about the, just the business side of things there. And it's about people who have a lot of hats. So Steph, how did you guys come up with the concept and how did you kind of launch it? So walk me through how that happened.
So we came up with the concept for Twoobs probably 8 years ago. And if we were looking for a quick win, shoes were not it. We didn't realize at all that shoes were going to take us years to develop and sample. And we went through 10 rounds of really ugly sampling before we even got to our first product. So it took a really long time and a lot of knowledge building and a lot of scrappiness of just asking friends of friends of friends who worked in in shoes, hey, can you tell us about them? So it took us a while to get it up and running. And when we first started, for us being animal lovers, we were like, right, we're not using any animal products in the shoes. That's a non-negotiable. And actually, fun fact, because I told this to somebody the other day and they were shocked. We weren't vegan then. We weren't eating vegan. So we kind of went vegan with our fashion personally years before we actually started eating vegan. And so we had started to move our own wardrobes towards being animal free. And so it just made total sense for Twoobs to be animal free as well. And yeah, that was 6 years ago now that we launched. And over the years, we've added in more, now we're really environmentally focused. That came a couple of years ago. And obviously we can dive deeper into that. But I think for us, it hasn't been right, what are our values? How can we put our values into our business? It's never as systematic as that. It's more a natural, organic process that we really care about stuff. And in order to feel good about what we're doing every day, we need to bring in the stuff that we care about to the stuff that we're doing.
Can completely relate to that. I love that. So I guess I don't know which one of you is best to answer, so I'll let you decide. But where do you start with something like that? Obviously, most shoes are probably literally leather, or I'm guessing plastic. Where do you start? Where did you start to even work out how to be sustainable when it comes to shoes?
To be honest, we kind of thought that there was this big world of secrecy around sustainable fashion. And I'm saying that in quotation marks because now I don't really believe it to be a thing. But at the time, we thought, oh, right, There is someone somewhere that knows how to source all the sustainable materials. What are all the sustainable factories that make sustainable shoes that are doing all the sustainable things? And we thought that we just had to find the person with the key to get us inside the room so that we could just do all the shit. Can I say shit on this podcast?
Yeah, 100%.
Great. So, spoiler alert, that is so not how it works.
Wow.
Unfortunately. So we did go on, actually it was funny. So we started doing our own learning, and then we thought, no, we need this God with the key to get us into the room. And so then we brought on a sustainability consultant. We paid them a lot of money. And then all we learned from them was all the things we had already learned by just applying ourselves and searching online and doing little short courses. So I guess the good part and the bad part is that there aren't really that many answers, and that the movement is really just a bunch of people who care a lot, who are trying to figure out how to do this thing. And that's why I come back to what I said earlier about I don't believe that there's such thing as sustainable fashion, because we're not there yet.
No.
And we still firmly believe that the most sustainable pair of shoes you can have is the one that you already own. And then if you need a new pair, that's when you come to Twoobs. And we're trying to infuse our footwear with really good stuff like recycled materials like sugarcane. And we're giving you a recycling program at the end of the life. So we're offering good things.
Love
but
that.
I think it's really about going out and doing your own research, and then from there figuring out where you fit into this massive puzzle and problem that is fashion and sustainability.
Totally. I just got goosebumps because I feel like that's me. Like, it's trying, when you finally like wake up to this whole thing and the consumerism around it, it's sort of too late. You're already in the rat race. You're like, where do I start? Like, literally, what part of my life do I start tackling? And I think, like, you know, shopping at op shops, exactly like you said, just wearing your product, like wearing your shoes are obviously good quality. Like, wear them until they die. And it's so great. It's so great that you can recycle them and that you promote that. So I think that's really great. I'm going to ask Steph this. So how much do you think, like, maybe working, you know, as bloggers and probably getting a lot of like paid promotion or working with brands, how much do you think that that kind of shaped the direction that your career has now gone? Like, do you think that impacted this decision?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we never knew what we were doing. We're not planners. We're not 10-year planners. We're not 5-year planners. We're not 1-year planners. We're not really even 3-month planners. So we're really the type of people that just dive right in and go for it. And we really didn't plan much of any of this. I mean, 10 years ago, we were like, hey, wouldn't it be so cool if we started a blog? And then maybe if that blog got big, we could like go to some fashion weeks or something. You know, that was the plan. And that was the full extent of the plan. And then that happened and we were like, cool, what now? Then we started working with brands promoting their products. And then we got really sick of being in front of the camera because we never set out intending to be models, but just accidentally ended up being them for a short while. And so we were like, oh,
that sucks.
Honestly, hats off to all the models out there, because it was so detrimental to our mental health to constantly be scrutinized for the way we looked. It is so difficult. And so, yeah, we hated it. And we realized we had this platform. We'd had all these followers that we gotten. So we thought, let's start our own thing that we can sell to them rather than just selling them other people's products. So yeah, that whole journey that we went on definitely ended up leading to us creating Twoobs. Did it help Twoobs? We really thought we were onto something. We thought we were so clever. It was like back in those days of Frank Body, just, you know, creating coffee, rubbing their kitchen table and packaging up and selling it, millions of them, and Triangle swimwear. I don't know if you remember those neoprene, the neoprene swimwears, probably now that I think about it, where we got the idea for neoprene shoes. And yeah, we thought, okay, we're going to jump on this and be like this Instagram brand, jump on this Instagram trend. Turns out shoes are not like that at all. Shoes take a lot more to convince people to buy. Yeah, like teeth whitening, awesome Instagram brand. Shoes, not so much.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, one way that it's definitely benefited us is we had a lot of experience in the industry. We got to work out how it worked. We made some incredible connections within the industry. So it definitely ended up leading us to a pretty cool place. But I don't see why anyone can't go out and do the same thing without building the blog beforehand.
Good to know. I guess you definitely had that social media experience, I'm guessing, as well. Which, yeah, I guess brings me to that question, and this is probably another Steph question. Like, how important do you think, you've touched on it, but how important these days when you're starting a brand or you're starting a business is social media? Because to me, it feels like you can't do anything anymore without social media. And sometimes it's at its own detriment, but yeah, like how, and I guess if you have any advice for someone who's starting out, like how important is it to get a hold on your socials from the start?
Firstly, we hate social media. Just putting that out there. How difficult has it made all of our lives that now, like,
oh my God, I hate it.
As women, not only do we have to do everything, plus run a business, plus then we have to do our own marketing engine.
And then your own channel still has to be managed.
It's just ridiculous. I don't have a personal Instagram actually.
Oh, wow.
We started How to Live before the days of really having personal Instagram. So gladly, I never had my own. But yeah, I think that the amount of time that you have to spend on social media now, and it wasn't bad enough that it was a feed post, then it became stories, and now reels and TikToks, they are so time consuming. So I think it's something we've talked a lot about and I live in Byron Bay where people love to be slow, and people ask me a lot, like a lot of people are health and wellness coaches and massage therapists and that kind of thing here. And even they're like, do you think it's possible to build a business without social media? And I honestly don't know that it is. Like, even if you want to be a meditation teacher for just your local community, I don't know that you can build much of a business without social media, maybe in certain industries, but particularly when it comes to anything like fashion or beauty or anything like that.
What about Steph? Sorry to interject. What do you think if you're business to business as opposed to business to customer like we are?
True.
Probably. Yeah, that's a good point. I think if you're business to business, then that's
and you
probably
could use web marketing and email marketing.
True. Yeah. And I guess if you are consumer facing, it is always, you do need social media. But I think, do you have to kill yourself on all the social media platforms and, using every medium? No. And that's something that we try to just really focus in on a couple of platforms or a couple of things that we're good at. So back in the day, we'd be like, right, how are we going to grow our Facebook and our Pinterest and our Twitter and our Instagram and our everything? It's like, that's not going to happen. So we don't focus on Facebook at all. We don't focus on Twitter at all. We don't focus on Pinterest at all, because we're like, those aren't our platforms. So I think really identifying like 1 to 2 platforms that your customers are and where you're going to create the most amount of impact is really important. And then also thinking about your time as a currency, because your time is important and you need to be thinking about where you're spending your time. And if you're going to be spending all day, every day doing TikToks and reels, if you want to be a life coach, then maybe, yes, that is the perfect place to be spending your time, because it's really relevant and you're going to be giving amazing tips and you're really going to build your business. Or like, I know a lot of people that are like social media marketing teachers, they're spending all their time on reels and TikTok, and it's really relevant. For us, we have a booming business right now without much reels engagement or TikTok. We're starting to build our TikTok following, and that's it's just hit 1,000. And that's with a full-time PR and social media manager on our team who spends like honestly 50% of her time at the moment on that. So if we were building a business, I think thinking about our own time and our own mental health and what's sustainable, if it was just the two of us again building it now, I don't think we would be doing that, because that doesn't feel good to me. I don't like being on TikTok and reels. I think it's about thinking about things that you can do that set you apart, that really capture that engagement. For example, Jess and I write really captivating blog posts on Twoobs' blog, which is called The Climate Blog. And when we share those, we turn them into like a feed post where you can swipe through and see like a few of the quotes from the article, and you can click through to the article. Those get just as much as engagement as our reels on TikTok. So like, and it's not a video, it's a static post. It's getting clever about it. So it's really about thinking about what you do, thinking about what other people aren't doing on social media. Like, you know, if you're just copying what everybody else is doing, which we used to be so guilty of, you know, then you're not going to have any cut through. But it's about being smart with your time, I think, rather than just giving of all of your time.
I love that as advice. I think, it's starting out. I was thinking it the other day. I'm like, every second job at the moment online is like TikTok manager. I'm like, what has the world become?
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know did you both, so before you did the blog, was your background in like communications and journalism, or did you just kind of learn it as you went?
Mine,
before we did How to Live?
Yeah, so I studied professional communication at RMIT. And so I was focused on PR. It was honestly pre-social media. Like we learned how to make audio kind of things, which turned out to be podcasts. So yeah, I had worked in like event management, and I actually started my own market called the Up and Comers Fashion Market. I think that's what it was called a while ago.
Cool.
So yes, I came from the like communication side of things, and then Jess
and I was a little old baby at the ripe old age of 19 when we started. So I was studying at RMIT, also doing fashion and textile merchandising, so like the business side of fashion. I was also working as a stylist at Topman, so like I loved fashion, but I was very, very young when we started.
Wow, but it all kind of like links into your interests, I guess. So, and you guys also do a bit of a podcast now. So tell me about that.
Yes, we love podcasting. In case you can't tell, we love to talk. Yeah, it's like
same.
We're sisters, and we have endless things to say to each other. So like putting a microphone in front of us is basically just like recording what happens every freaking day. But so we actually had a podcast for our blog. So How to Live turned from a blog into an Instagram, and then it turned into a podcast, and we ran that for about 2 years.
Wow.
What was the byline on that? It was
of How to Live the podcast.
It was very cute. Yeah.
It was. Oh wait, that's our new one. It's. Oh, I know what it was. It's figuring out this thingy called life.
Oh yeah. So when we started, it was very girl bossy. We were interviewing lots of female entrepreneurs, and then it's funny because the podcast went on such a big journey, because I think that 2-year period was actually such an intense period of time for Stephanie and I, where we were going on our own personal journeys. We kind of came up in the girl boss era with Sophia Amoruso, looking to Nasty Gal and looking at all these massive companies. Definitely. And it was all about women working like men. You know, but we're women, we can work exactly like men. And we got really stuck in that, and we became workaholics, and we wanted to read all the things and know all the things. So that was really how the podcast started. And then it was funny because obviously very quickly we got very burnt out, and we realized that, this isn't like super resonating with us. And I think that we continued to interview people that were really successful, and we would talk to them about their businesses. And then usually around the last few questions, we would talk to them about, you know, looking back on your life or looking back on the last 10 to 20 years, like what makes you feel the best? What are you the most proud of? And the answer was always, you know, my family, or my contribution to whatever I care about, or the relationship that I've been able to build with myself, or the relationship I've been able to build with somebody else. And it was never all the dollars in my bank account and all the hours that I worked and all these badges of honor, the workaholic things that I'm wearing right now. And so I want to say that the podcast was really instrumental in our own personal journeys as well, that it was just constantly being reiterated to us that this thing that you're doing is not the key to your happiness, and your worth is not your worth does not come from your work. And so the podcast takes this really beautiful journey where towards the end we're interviewing meditation teachers, and I became a yoga teacher and Steph became a meditation teacher, and just this like really bringing in these more like feminine ways of being, that we can be girl bosses totally, and also we don't have to be dicks, and also we can be kind, and also we can treat ourselves and each other with so much gentleness. And so that's how to live. That was a really big tangent, actually. I got it.
No, that's I love that.
That's how to live the podcast. So that was like our first podcast, baby. And then we had a second child.
And we love that people are still discovering how to live the podcast, even though it's ended. And we've realized it's this beautiful journey, as Jess said, that like, if you want 2 years worth of content, you can listen to it and you can almost grow with it. It's a really nice, like it's cool that it's sitting out there. And while we're not doing any new episodes for the moment, we never say never, because we love doing How to Live the podcast. It's a cool listen for people. But then yes, the second child. Sorry.
So then we had a second child. That, going back to what you said about wearing so many hats, I think that we got to a place where we were spending so much time on How to Live, and we were spending so much time on Twoobs, and we thought, we could be being more efficient with our time. And if we had a Twoobs podcast that would also be adding to the Twoobs messaging and achieving some Twoobs goals, then that would probably be a better way to spend our time. So now we've started a podcast called Hey Twoobs. And the mission for that is, can we save the planet, but make it fashion?
Love.
And essentially each week we tackle a tough question, like, is sustainable fashion only for rich people, or can I get over my shopping addiction? And it's supposed to be fun, but it's also supposed to be informative, which we are trying to strike the balance of, so you don't feel like you're learning, but in fact, by the end of the half hour, you have learned something.
I love that. That actually just like resonates with me so much, because I'm doing this podcast. It's obviously about hustling. I work full-time in PR. I am just about to start studying nutrition, and I feel like I'm about, literally what you just said, I'm about to kind of pivot. And you'll notice as well, like, I've had a lot of really successful guests, but I've also had a lot of people in sustainability, and I'm planning some wellness guests. So I feel like it's kind of like, I feel like doing something like this, you actually learn so much about yourself, which is, invaluable.
Absolutely. And also like jumping into the deep end, like there's nothing more scary than starting a podcast.
Oh, it's terrifying.
Especially by yourself.
True.
Yeah, props to you.
Oh my God. We have it so easy, because if my brain's off, Jess will just jump in with a question. But yeah, it's all you, baby.
Yeah, I'm open to eventually having a co-host, but yeah, like I love doing it. It's like it's my little passion project. So it doesn't really feel like effort, but really understand what you say with, like, you don't want to do too many things at once. But love the sound of the podcast. I'll have to check it out. I actually do a section in my podcast where I plug a podcast. So I'll have a listen, and I'll talk about an episode. And yeah, I guess like, I think you've sort of covered this, but like, what are some like key takeaways? Like, I might ask you this, Steph, like, obviously the last 2 years, I don't need to get into that conversation. Yeah. We've all talked about it.
What happened the last?
What do you mean the last 2 years?
Where did they go?
But like, what are some, I guess, learnings you've had? Like, I think all of us have, and I think Jess, you just covered yours, but Steph, like, what are some things you've really learned about yourself, or about like what you want from the next, few years?
Great question. I feel like firstly is YOLO, like we just, although if you're a Buddhist, you live more than once, but
not at this rate, honey.
You live once.
If there's a planet.
Stef Dadon.
So I think that, for me, I moved to Byron a year and a half ago, and I would have never done that pre-pandemic. I would have just been like, I just think I would have been like, I want to be close to my family, and I want to be close to my friends, and I want to be in the place that I always grew up. And I would have never left the team. Like that was such a no-no. But I feel like remote working has just changed things for us. And now there's kind of no excuse not to be where you really want to be. And I love that I get to live this life here in so much nature, going to the beach a lot. And you know, just like living this incredible life, obviously dealing with a lot of natural disasters in here as well. There's all that as well.
But you're okay.
But yeah. So I think that it's pretty incredible that we get to design the lives that we want to live. And I think it's easy to forget that. And especially those of us who are privileged enough to live our lives in whatever way we want to, but we're kind of boxed in by ourselves and our own expectations that we're putting on ourselves. And it's like, if I have the means to go and, you know, travel and live somewhere else for a while, why wouldn't I do that? And so many decisions that I make are like, well, what would people think of that? And even on such a subtle level, you know, like just the way I walk down the street instead of skipping and singing is because I'm worried about what people will think of me. And the other day I was at a party, yes, a rare party in the last couple of years. It was amazing. There was a dance floor and everything. And I was on the dance floor with my partner and I was just like having the best time and I was completely letting loose. And afterwards he turned to me and he was like, you were literally dancing like there was nobody else in the room. Like nobody was watching you. I don't think you realize you were dancing like a crazy person. And I burst out laughing and I was like, I love that. I think that the last couple of years for me, I've just like untrained that inhibition that I have about people being around and people watching me. And I was dancing for me and I needed that dance. And so I let loose and I had a party and I had a boogie. And it didn't matter to me what anybody else was thinking. And that's something that I never had before.
I love that. What about you, Jess? Is there anything else you want to add, or you don't have to if you don't want to?
That was so good. I feel like I've had so many learnings over the last 2 years. I've just gotten a lot of clarity on the ways that I want to spend my time and the people that I want to spend my time with. Definitely.
Totally.
Like, I feel like some people fell.
Yeah.
You know, there were some people who I obviously was seeing, just out of like total convenience. And now I'm just like so much more selective about the way that I spend my time and the things that I put my energy into. And I think that I put myself first so much more, and like not you know, that's not selfish, and that like that also that recognizing that that's not selfish, that like that's totally okay. So I'm actually also moving. So Steph and I grew up in Melbourne. But so my boyfriend and I are moving to the Mornington Peninsula next month. And that's also something that I never would have done. Like even that idea of like living in Victoria, but not living in Melbourne and not living within the 10K radius that I grew up in, you know, that's wild. And I remember when I started talking about moving there, and my friends would say, oh, well, you'll never do that. You know, like, oh yeah, you're talking about that. Like, you'll just never do it. And it's just so funny because like, why can't I? And I don't know anyone around there, and I'll like commute to work a little bit and I'll work from home and I'll just like create a life that feels really nice to me. And I never would have done that if it wasn't for the last 2 years.
Yeah, totally. I lived in Melbourne for 7 years and I just moved to the Gold Coast. So I feel like everyone's doing it. Yeah.
Love that.
But I'm loving it. Like literally after like yesterday I had a sunset swim. Like it was starting so good. Like so beautiful. But well, this has been so lovely. And yeah, I really loved talking to you both. If people want to find Twoobs on social media, Steph, where can they go, or online?
Yeah, so we're at Twoobs on Instagram. It's TWOOBS. There's a silent W in there. And obviously go check out the shoes at twoobs.com.
And the podcast is Hey Twoobs?
Hey Twoobs, yeah, in all your favorite podcast places.
Awesome. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much.
Have a good night.